to keep the Soviet Union out, the Americans in, and the Germans down. That's how NATO's first ever Secretary General described the organization's mission. Originally, the North Atlantic Treaty Organization aimed to protect members from the threat posed by the Soviet Union. But with that threat gone when the USSR collapsed, NATO struggled to redefine its role and relevance. Until now.
Today, there is no question. NATO is relevant. It is effective, and is more needed now than ever.
NATO is the club you want to be part of if you want other members to have your back and defend your interests.
Originally founded by 12 countries in 1949, NATO stands strong with 30 members today. Its key principle, collective defense.
One for all and all for one.
That was enshrined in Article 5 of its founding treaty, stating that an armed attack on one member is considered an attack on all NATO allies. In reality, that means any member can count on nearly 3.5 million personnel, troops and civilians combined.
We seek no conflict, but if conflict comes to us, we're ready for it, and we will defend every inch of NATO territory.
That is crucial for smaller countries who would be defenseless without their allies.
So NATO is really the best security guarantee you can have right now in today's world. It's really the 13 nations that make NATO that really decide on the priorities, the operations, and the budget.
Those decisions do not always come easily, with NATO's funding proving a sticking point in the past.
We must also ensure that NATO members meet their financial obligations and pay what they owe. Many have not been doing that.
Under NATO guidelines, members should be spending 2% of their GDP on defense each year, but in recent years, few members have done so. NATO also relies on contributions of forces from its members, as it doesn't have its own army.
There was a big question mark about NATO's future at the end of the Cold War, but somehow circumstances and crises gave NATO every time a new purpose. It started with the crisis in the Western Balkans. Then it turned quickly into an alliance to help in the fight against terrorism after 9/11, and especially with its largest ever operation in Afghanistan.
NATO evolved and expanded with new tasks ranging from members serving as peacekeepers in Bosnia, to fighting human trafficking, to intercepting refugees in the Mediterranean.
And now obviously with Vladimir Putin waging its second war of aggression against Ukraine, what's clear is that you need an organization like NATO.
Что никакого движения НАТО на восток дальше быть не должно.
Vladimir Putin started his war in Ukraine, demanding that NATO roll its borders back to where they were in the 1990s, which was swiftly rejected. And nothing unites a group more than a common enemy, as NATO Secretary General pointed out before the invasion.
If Kremlin's aim is to have less NATO on its borders, it will only get more NATO.
3 months later,
after 200 years of military non-alignment, Sweden has chosen a new path. Sweden and Finland submitted our formal requests to join NATO.
A symbolic move from countries who, even during the most tense moments of the Cold War, did not feel the need to join the alliance.
It's actually a big boost to the European family because you have two members of the European Union who are joining NATO, and I think it creates a greater overlap between those two clubs.
The two countries would add firepower and a geopolitical boost to NATO.
The Baltic region is actually the most vulnerable, critical region if you want to have a credible defense and deterrence posture against Russia.
Finland's ascension particularly would mean that a nation with which Russia shares an 830-mile border would become formally militarily aligned with the US. For now, Putin's plans seem to have backfired. His war united the West against Moscow in ways that seemed unimaginable before.